Okay, with all due respect to our sense of humility and integrity in our research, and with bioethics at this amazing frontier, my introduction to Bangkok last night at midnight as I arrived was a sign that I was sort of prompted to look up to. And so my research, let me say, was looking at the concept of infinity in ancient and modern cosmologies at this frontier of what I'll call cosmic ecology in the environmental science department, but it was using Buddhism, the infinity in Buddhist cosmology and modern cosmology. So the sign that I looked up and I saw, here it is, it said, everyone says nothing is infinite. Everything has its own end, but you are not everywhere. So, we take off in a slightly different direction with due humility without losing our basis here. So, I've integrated some of the astrobiology that I work with and bioethics. We have a new frontier field called Astrobioethics, which is very close to many of the things Daryl has spoken about, but integrating the sense of the value of life and the power of life, and the question, what is life? Which is one that we have not yet answered, either in biology, in cosmology, or in philosophy. We understand many things about life, but we don't understand really what life is. The question has not been answered. We can dance around it, however. We have the cells, we have the fetus, we have the exploded stardust, and the exploding star, and we have the light, the tunnel of light, and the earth, and all the elements, and the flow of all these dynamics together. So this is going to be at the forefront of culture and science here as we go on in our attention. So only 2 of my slides are packed with lots and lots of words. The rest of them will be more entertaining for you. But let's touch on some of these ideas. So I forgive you for the clutter of words. However, so our new biotechnological capabilities have brought us to this frontier of the meaning and integrity of birth and personhood. Questions of legal and biological parenthood, best interests of the birthing agents, and dangers of exploitation interface with the international dynamics of surrogacy, autonomy, and responsibility. And we'll look at some of these rather amazing case histories where the question of what is the child and who's really looking out for the rights of the child in some of these situations, either biologically or in terms of their citizenship and many of these other questions. Commercial surrogacy has now been banned in all but a few nations after questions of identity, statehood, and trafficking in human reproduction interfaced with questions of multiple biological parenthood and the health and well-being of the child. We have cloned mice and sheep successfully, generated artificial embryos from pluripotent mouse cells, and are experimenting with artificial wombs. We have begun experimenting with human gene modification using CRISPR, which our last talk just went very deeply into, and it is certainly the subject of our workshop. We are being called upon to develop a new moral spectrum to protect the dignity and autonomy of life. Ethical and legal challenges continue to arise with attempts to safeguard against commodification and the exploitation of human beings. Egg preservation through freezing presents diverse social, cultural, and legal considerations. We have couples where they will divorce and they've frozen eggs in their youth and they're wondering, one wants to go ahead and have babies, the other one wants to donate them, and perhaps the other one wants them destroyed. And there are questions, who owns these eggs and what becomes of them? This presentation explores several of these bioethical, political, social, and legal dilemmas with reference to specific cases and their ethical and moral challenges, of which there is no lack. So again, our question, what lives? Not only the question, what is life, but what is it that is alive? Or what is living within an organism? What is it that is conscious? What is life, consciousness, and the ecosystemic multiverse? This whole convening of all these different capabilities of thought, of biology. We know that we are not just the sum of our biology, because many people have disabilities and they're perfectly capable. The frontier of this is certainly someone like Stephen Hawking, who couldn't even speak anymore, but wrote some of the world's top treatises in gravitational science. So one of the amazing films that was actually on the plane where I was is Not Far from the Tree. I don't know if any of you have heard of this movie, but it's, and I didn't watch it, but I saw snapshots of it. So it's about children who are biologically or psychologically unique and how their parents work with this reality. And from the snapshot I saw, there was a little boy, maybe 9-10 years old, and he was seen typing on a board, and he typed. He had never spoken, and his mother had no idea who he was, and his parents. And he started typing because he couldn't speak. And he said, "Mom, I'm really intelligent. I'm in here." She said it was like the first time she'd ever met him. And so we are more than our biology. What is it that is living through our multiverse of potentiality? What is life at the convening architectures of all that gives rise to life as we know it and understand it? It's physics, chemistry, biology, neurosociological cultures, arches the inquiry into consciousness. What is it that is in fact living? We are comprehending the radically diverse ecosystemic nature of most all organisms. I was teaching quite often when I was in Australia, and I would start with a class of people and ask them, did everyone wind your heart up this morning to make sure it would go for the rest of the day? Anyone here? Did you do that this morning? No. And we had lunch, yes? Most people ate something. Did you make sure that some calcium went to the bones and some potassium to the brain so that it would all work out right? The rest of the day, at least? Not doing that. What's doing that? The whole entire history of the universe. We can say, oh, it's my biology. But we sit here, and I'm talking and walking and dancing and whatever we're all doing. But I'm not telling my food where to go and what to do. It's literally the history of the earth, the biology of everything that's ever lived on the earth. And before that, it's the physics of the whole cosmos. Maybe innumerable cosmoses, we don't know. But certainly that same impulse that breathed out the universe, or whatever it is that's living through it, is also living through us. There isn't a wall, there isn't a boundary line, other than like a boundary of a cell, which is integrated with every other cell in our body. Our body is integrated with the cellular structure of the atmosphere of everything on the earth with the solar atmosphere with all the suns of the galaxy. Goes on and on and on. We don't have a boundary like that. We are literally integrated, and again this goes to what we were talking about with our friend from the Buddhists, that everything is interdependent. And it's also very Taoist, that every cell is supported, every drop of life is supported by the whole universe. It supports everything else in the universe and is supported by. So there's all this interdependence that is just the logical nature of life itself. It doesn't have a beginning and a boundary, because we can't really say that, okay, we'll take this person, we'll remove the whole rest of the universe. Where do they exist? If we're talking about the integrated being that we know of, perhaps there is the one, and the Buddha talks about going beyond all conditioned existence to the unconditioned nature of reality. Then we all merge back into the one great heart, the transcendent being. But in terms of the expression, there is this logical continuum whereby everything emerges from that. In the Hindu tradition, my favorite Upanishad, the teaching says, from wholeness comes wholeness, wholeness remains. Each one of us is a drop of that integrity, if we are to be life in integrity. So the human being is understood, we are each 90% bacterial DNA, only 10% Homo sapien DNA. If the bacteria were not digesting and keeping our pores and all of our hair and our skin clean, we would die. We would not exist as a biological organism. We are an ecosystem, literally an ecosystem, in ecosystems. So beyond the last common ancestor, we share our origins with the entire cosmic dynamism, from its original impulse, the stellar fiery nucleosynthesis, which gave rise to all of the elements we're made of, the carbon and oxygen and calcium. All of these were formed in supernova explosions, and then the dynamics that gave rise to our solar system, the geo-bio-organic ecosystem, and its generation. There are trillions of stars, billions of galaxies, and as yet incalculable planets filling the universe that we are fathoming. We have found over 4,000 other planets going around other stars. We're realizing that solar systems are the norm rather than the exception in our universe, certainly in our galaxy. There are numerous other organisms on our planet which we still don't know about. When we think about our human existence, we lay claim to individuality, partly by choice and culture, yet we don't initiate our own heartbeats. We are attuned to the heartbeat of the universe. We think and speak uttering this ephemeral pronoun I, as the entire cosmic tension and its organic diversity produce the incessant theater of existence and interdependent origination. Several of our ancient cultures have spoken of life on other worlds. Theoretical cosmology has more recently pushed us off the edge of inquiry into multiverses with multidimensional possibilities. And this isn't new, although it is in modern science. It is very much present in Buddhist and Hindu cosmology. The Buddha spoke about infinite, innumerable worlds, like the gaping mouths of lions, like our galaxies that we know. How did he know this? Because he could tune his mind to the universe that we now point our telescopes at and share with our community and our school children. So it's an amazing frontier of science and the universe. All these intriguing insights are convening at the nexus of science and culture and our quest into the nature of life, consciousness, and identity across the universe. All right, some of our more cultural approaches here. So we have that integrity with the impulse of the universe. The stuff, the breath, the impulse that informs us is the same impulse. And we're measuring it with our astronomical tools, the dark energy moving the universe more and more rapidly. And I have a few quotes here because I am dancing at this frontier of birth and the biological birth and the universe and our integrity with it. Giving birth and being born brings us to the essence of creation, where the human spirit is courageous and bold, and the body is a miracle of wisdom. So what is being born and birth, and what is life? It is the foundation stone on which the theory and content of any system of bioethics is ultimately set. It is the question that no longer can be taken for granted. In the end, the way we answer this question frames the wide range of different norms, principles, values, or intuitions that characterize today's bioethical discourse. If we don't know what is life, or if we don't at least dance on this frontier question, how can we know what we are seeking when we seek a bioethics of life? So this is from Taylor and DeLauro in 2007. And what is behind it is a starbirth galaxy, a galaxy giving rise to multiple dynamics. All those little blue and white dots are new baby stars being born. And we will look at this more closely, the question of what's happening in the universe as above, so below. What is the relationship with what's going on in the universe and what's literally happening in the ecosystem of the Earth? One of my favorite frontiers is realizing, as I was staring out at the universe, that this whole dynamic of information, which has been saturating the Earth from its beginnings 4.5 billion years ago, literally pouring through the Earth, is informing everything, our biology, our cell. We walk through the history of the universe. We are informed with all of this. And the Earth is responding with all its different creative life forms to the dynamics of the universe. It's very, very awesome and remarkable to think about. So here we have the dynamics of the replicating, the zygote expanding into the fetus, expanding into the birthing of multiple children and multiple potential universes. Each one of these lines, my friend Andre Linde is a cosmologist over at Stanford, and when I was studying astrophysics in Australia, I realized that the last chapter in every book was written by this interesting character who was supposed to be Russian, named Andre Linde, about multiple possible universes. That's Andre's diagram there, and you can find it as it pops up. And all of these are the idea that maybe there are multiple universes coming from parent universes, and they have relationships between them over time in the tree of cosmic life. So we have infinite possible universes, but each ontological being is perhaps a cosmic seed potential. And this idea is really brilliant to think about. And it's inherent in Jain cosmology, in Buddhist cosmology, and in Hindu cosmology. That every drop of life, this is my favorite one here, you can see the artful ears on the elephant, I hope. They're butterfly ears. That's a lovely contribution. But every different species, according to the Eastern philosophy, goes through the cycles of evolution. And each one has its strains, just like types of, and then there are different types of people and different cultures of people. So there are like sets within nature everywhere. In mathematics, we learn this in the 4th or the 5th grade. There are different sets of types of fruits, sets of types of flowers, sets of types of animals, the phylogeny. And perhaps there are these sets of types of beings, and each one is evolving through these cycles of eons according to the Eastern tradition, and perhaps also according to our modern logic as we explore these new cosmologies, to become seeds of planetary or stellar or universal consciousnesses. We're told in all of the different traditions that eventually merge back into the one. What does that mean? Is that cyclic expression of life over time? Do we awaken and awaken and awaken to first thinking of ourselves as a separate cell, and then as part of humanity and part of the earth and part of the greater scheme of life? And eventually, who knows, we are all perhaps cells in a star that we will birth. Because it's constant throughout the universe. What does evolution really, really mean? So we have these infinities across scales. We have cells in the brain. We have cells in the heart. These are heart cells like that. And we have cells in the universe and the brain from the galaxies and the birthing of brain cells and heart cells and cosmological fibers like that. So this fractal nature of reality across scales. All right, so here we have this idea of planets, sets of planets, solar systems, sets of families, different types of them, the neural network of the brain, the neural network of the universe. Our little fairy in the middle up here, sitting in the flowers, one of the little flowers. And now what I want to do do is share with you some more of these ideas about birthing itself and the questions that we are on the frontier of. So, with human rights, surrogacy, and some of these other very significant questions, due to specific biotechnological and medical procedural advances and controversies, as well as challenges to both health and human rights, as well as many benefits and potential beneficial life-affirming altruistic outcomes, all these things coexist. In vitro fertilization, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, where embryos are created and tested for healthy diagnosis prior to being implanted in a living womb, genetic testing during pregnancy with medically based selective abortion as options in extreme disease cases or unwanted multiple gestational cases. And I'm not here presenting the ethical challenges with these things. These are just our technologies and what we're looking at now. We will discuss some cases of these. Potentials for in vivo surgery. Many of these have happened now with repairing the heart valves of babies in the womb, egg freezing for later access, utilization of third and fourth party gametes to facilitate the realization of successful fertilization when the potential parents' genetic material are not fertile or fully healthy. This has presented many, many questions. What does it mean to have 3 parents or 4 parents, or the biological substance from multiple parents contributing to one baby, to one individual? Surrogacy presents this challenge, certainly, because the spinal fluid is formed of the mother's fluid in the womb, and that's for life. So if what we're doing is going in, and now we have parents, particularly from the more affluent countries, Australia, England, and the US, or also India, people saying, well, the parents aren't fertile, or they've waited too long to have babies, so they're going to have a woman in. Before it was India. India now made it illegal because of abuse of surrogacy, and because some very outrageous cases occurred. Thailand, the Ukraine, those places are still, not Thailand, pardon me, Thailand has made it illegal. Laos. But Laos, when the women from Australia have babies birthed by Laotian women, they come to Thailand to give them birth because the medical procedures are better here in Thailand, because there's a doctor who was trained in Australia for this. But then, who's really the mother? All the biological substance over the birthing period of the child, but then you have these tiny Laotian women giving birth to these white children. Maybe the sperm came from Sweden and the egg came from the Ukraine, and then an Australian couple comes and gives the money to the surrogate woman and takes the baby home. Australia hasn't refused these babies yet. Japan, there was a case where a baby was birthed by a Japanese couple because the woman was infertile with the man's sperm and an Indian woman's surrogate and another Japanese woman's egg, and they divorced a month before the baby was born. The woman wanted nothing to do with the baby. The father wanted the baby. Japan said, this is an Indian baby. Japan would not accept the baby as a citizen. India said, it's a Japanese baby, it's not an Indian baby. The Japanese man went to claim his daughter. It took months. Japan would not accept the baby. His mother ended up having to go to India to look after the baby while he argued in the courts of Japan, please let me bring my baby home. Eventually the baby was allowed to come home. What of the rights of that child? What are the rights of many of these children? Something very similar has happened in Germany, in other countries, in Italy, when they have multiple genomes created, multiple embryos created. Italy is saying every one of these embryos is a life, and they're demanding that all the embryos be implanted. Now here's this poor woman who wanted to have one healthy child, having 4 embryos, unique embryos implanted, and Italy is saying you can't have an abortion. So she's ending up going to another country, or having to go to another country, if she wants only one child, and not to give birth to 4 children. So there are all these complications. There's also no standardization yet across nations or any individual nation, even in the US, which is not regulated. There's some regulation. America is still, with all its regulatory companies and industries and government bodies, there's still no standardization of practice. We had also a man in Japan who ended up ordering, if I may, 50 surrogate children of his own sperm. The question, eventually it was discerned before all of these children were ordered, what's he going to do with 50 babies? He's not even married. You know, where is the bioethics around all of these questions? So there's many amazing things that are actually happening that we need to take very, very seriously at the frontier of regulation and bioethics. With age, okay, so so many women also are choosing to pursue their career long into beyond when they have the capability to have a baby. So these England and the US, and I don't know which other countries, have said, well, up to age 55, we can prepare a woman's womb and implant embryos from other sources, from other women, and she can bear children. So a woman in England who was 55, a barrister, was the first woman to have this done. They implanted 2 embryos in her womb. She carried the babies almost to term with several complications. Both babies were born with breathing problems. Is this ethical? What are the lives of those children? Well, many complications in birthing, because this woman decided, okay, now I'm ready to buy 2 babies. It's illegal according to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of the Child to buy and sell human beings. What are we doing at this frontier? What is surrogacy? Is this the purchase of children? An Australian woman went to India researching what was happening with babies and this birthing industry that was going on with surrogacy in India, and said she was a prospective client and she wanted to find out what if she brought an embryo that had been implanted in Australia. Could she find a surrogate mother? The people said, why should you wait 9 months? We have a baby you can take home now. And they brought out a white baby that they said she could take home, she could purchase. This is the buying and selling of babies. This is a human trade. Because evidently some couple had ordered a baby or 2 babies and only wanted 1 baby. Or somebody didn't claim a baby they had paid to have made by a surrogate. This is happening, and this has happened, and this is one of the reasons why India and most countries in the world now have outlawed surrogacy, because of this human trade. There are very successful cases, and now most countries are saying you have to do that with a family member or a friend, or without including economics, because too many questions that are trespassing on the human rights have been happening. We also have the situation that next to the military-industrial complex, which is the biggest economic industry in the world, the sale of women and children and the pharmaceutical company are the next 2 major multi-billion or trillion-dollar industries in 2019 in our world, which is worse than shocking, needless to say. All right, a few more of these situations I want to share with you. We've talked about surrogacy. Egg donation is the other thing, which is very, very controversial. So a couple wants an egg donated from a healthy very intelligent with such and such an IQ, young woman at UCLA. And they put an ad in the UCLA newspaper. This is done often now. This is regular. And this very brilliant young woman, she has no children of her own. She decides she will have $20,000 and be able to get through the next semester of her schooling. So she goes through a summer of all these chemicals inducing egg production, and then she's going to have these eggs extracted. So what's happened now? First of all, those chemicals are very dangerous for the body. It takes her a long time to rebalance her entire endocrine system. Some women end up being infertile. Some women end up losing ovaries. Some women end up with cancer or strokes, or the worst case, a young law student who was funding her last year of law school died. This is not a normal process for these egg donations. That's their first genetic progeny for these women. We know that twins have relations even when separated at birth. What if this woman's first genetic progeny, maybe 10 eggs, maybe 50 eggs are taken out during this procedure? One of them is implanted, or two, according to the business deal. What is happening to those other 30 or 6 or 12 eggs? Where is the research going on with them? The major research universities in our world, these laboratories all over, are using these eggs because they are going somewhere. Are they going into a sperm bank or an egg bank somewhere? And she doesn't know, but she has 12 genetic progeny somewhere in the world that she will never know about? According to international law, a child can find out who is their own genetic parents. But in these cases, it's not possible very often. We're just developing the registries to be able to let these children then find out who are really my parents genetically or biologically. They don't know many of them. There's this website, Bioethics and Culture. Jennifer Law was a nurse, and she's developed intense research at this frontier. And she has, her first movie was Exploitation, about these women having their eggs extracted and what their health consequences are. The second film was something about the father. So all these women were saying they wanted a tall, dark, handsome, blue-eyed egg donor, sperm donor, and that's what it said on the register. So they kept getting these, the sperm from this one person, number 40, number 22 or whatever it was, number 29. And one of the children decided to go find out who was number 29 and where were all his children. He was a beach, he's a surfer, he's very nice looking guy who lives in a trailer on the beach. He was help funding his life, and he has something like 25 kids. And they all met, and they found how similar they all were, how much they crossed their genetic realities. Many of these things, there are so many issues. At our bioethics conference in Israel last year, they were tracing some of these things. And these are relatively benign situations. Some of the situations have occurred where the parents say, okay, we want a blonde guy from a sperm from Switzerland and another one from the Ukraine, the egg, and they're not getting, then they're getting a child who is maybe Oriental and African, and it wasn't the one they wanted. What happens to this child? You know, it's like, and these are things that, these are questions that are happening. So many of these ethical and bioethical questions at the frontier of birthing were just beginning to come into taking responsibility from the bioethics perspective of what's going on. Shockingly, in the US, this one man had a surrogate birth, was it 2 or 3 children were born from his sperm. He is mentally not capable and lives with his mother. And the woman, the surrogate woman, decided she's the mother. of these children. She wanted to keep the mother. It was taken to court, to my horror, I think near San Diego, and the judge, for whatever reason, God knows, said the contract was such that he has purchased these babies, and so he gets to take the children. I don't understand how some of these things can be happening, but we are already into 1984. We are long past 1984 and some of these questions. So, the UN Declaration on the Rights of the Child, all but the US and Somalia of the world's nations, 194 have signed it, and yet many of our practices are compromising it because the rights of the child are not being taken fully into consideration and not being respected. So the questions, all these legal questions and all these legal controversies are present, and our question again comes back to what is actually living through this relationship of a sperm and an egg. Where is the question of what is indwelling the life form, and what is the meaning of all of this? There was one young woman who was born of a surrogate parents, and her mother wasn't really her mother biologically, and she felt very conflicted throughout her whole life. There was another in one of the films of Jennifer Law where a little 5-year-old girl, her parents are a gay couple of men, and the friend, who is a woman, gave birth for them to a child who happens to be a girl, and she spends the weekends with her mother's other children, and then goes back to her two fathers. And her mother said to her, and you see it in the film, "Mommy, why did you give me away? Mommy, I have hair just like yours. You didn't give the other children away. Why did you give me away?" What are we doing? What are these questions that we're looking at? And not all situations are not successful. I was one of the first people where I rented an Airbnb when I came to the US was a man in Santa Cruz, and he had two friends who were lesbian gay, and they both wanted a child, so he gave them both a child, two little girls, and they spend the weekend with their father and the weeks with their mother, and the situation is different because they like having a father for the weekend and having their mothers during the week. So that one is successful, but there are many, many questions that are on the table. So let's proceed here. These are offering you that perspective on the biology. So these are new birthing stars in our universe. This is the Orion Nebula, the nearest place to us in the universe, where literally we see through the dust and gas, and we see the new baby stars being born, like little suns, yeah? Just like we have the new babies in the world, there are thousands of new baby stars being born like butterfly cocoons in the Orion Nebula. It's the nearest place to us in the universe. It's like an obstetrics world. And there are many of these star-birthing areas throughout the universe. This again is Orion. And the question is, what is the relationship? So we have Shiva and Shakti, the life force, and Shiva, the purity, and the birthing of life. What and how can we possibly know if these relationships on the earth actually have these correlations to dynamics or harmonics in what's going on in the universe? All our philosophies tell us that, about the music of the spheres giving rise to the dance of life on earth. So there was this wonderful art exhibit at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, and what it made me think about all these ribbons hanging from the ceiling to the floor of the cathedral. In the Indian Ayurvedic medicine, it says that the life force, the soul, has a thread, the golden thread of life that anchors to the zygote at the time of gestation. Many times the parents will be together and there's no life form that comes with it. But if the life thread anchors to the zygote, it says then that life takes hold of that cellular process and imbues it with its own presence. Many of these experiences, out-of-body experiences during surgeries, people have this experiences where I was floating on the top of the surgical room. I heard the doctor say this and that, and there was a thread that tied me to my body. And when they woke me back up, suddenly I was back in my body. But they see this thread connecting, or in accidents. This has been seen by many people. So that kind of thing that's spoken about in Indian Ayurvedic medicine, people have had experiences of that. So many women talk about that there is a spiritual dimension to childbirth, and they have had experiences of that. Many women from all different cultures. Hafiz, the wonderful Sufi poet, has said, "Your soul and my soul once sat together in the beloved's womb. Your heart and my heart are very, very old friends." So the Arab woman, the Muslim woman, says, "I felt like a miracle might happen, like there was something holy around me, protecting me, something beyond the ordinary, a feeling, a spirit about being part of God's creation of a child." Many of my friends, it's not just this one person that will have that experience. They may know the moment they're pregnant. They might know when they conceive, even though they don't biologically, oh, I didn't have my cycle for 2 months or something. They know, or they feel like in that period of time there's something present with them. And many, many women have these types of experiences. Certainly during pregnancy they feel these things. Chinese woman, it really isn't easy. Every mother experiences pain, but I do believe there is something sacred. And then an Australian woman, I didn't think about childbirth being a spiritual experience at the time, but looking back, I do. I think it's just the way you can connect with your baby in a way you probably never connected with anything. It gives you a whole different perspective on your spiritual side. So there are many excellent articles at this frontier, spirituality and childbearing, spirituality at the beginning of life, and much research that's been done by a collection of women about throughout cultures across the world. In almost every different culture and country they've been researching this. People who are religious, women who are not religious, what their experiences around childbirth are. So what is birth? Life, reiterating itself from the heart of cosmos. This is a pulsar in the center of a star that has exploded. Every pulsar is unique, it has a unique heartbeat. The universe is literally filled with these little heartbeats of stars. More of our quotes from Robin Lim. Birthing is the most profound initiation to spirituality that a woman can have. A baby is something you carry inside for 9 months, in your arms for 3 years, and in your heart until the day you die. We all have mothers. We have had mothers. We have that experience. You're always their child, or your children are always your children no matter what, because there is a very remarkable bond that is made. But then what do we have? There was a Ukrainian woman who did the egg donation, and then she felt for years, where is my child? What happened to that child? I don't know. I feel like I need to know. I don't know what happened in that situation. But that's her genetic progeny. So we have here the idea you never understand life until it grows inside of you. I have not had a child, and I'm trying to understand life. But that idea of Venus literally crossing the sun. Where's Venus? This is Venus. The planet is transiting the sun. This is a radio image of our sun. And then Venus herself with another radio image of the sun, birthing life within her, in her own heart. I've taken the liberty of of art and astronomy to convey some of the beauty of this reality, because it transcends words, and it is literally the beauty and the play of the universe. So we go from bioscience to cognition to culture. We're researching across nations, migrations, species, health and disease, in cognitive and neuroscience fields. What is the brain, the mind, consciousness? What is it that thinks? Is cosmos itself a thought? So I was teaching a high school class, like 12th graders, and I said, well, what do you guys think cosmos is? What is the universe? One of them this young woman raised her hand, and she goes, well, I think maybe it's a thought. I'm like, okay, you got it. You take them all and run with it. Yeah, it's remarkable. What we know inside of us. I mean, those who and what we are and what we don't know and what we do know. And taking the veils off in Christianity. First we see us in a glass like dusty veils, and then we clear it, polishing the mirror. Within the Chinese tradition, we're polishing the mirror and polishing the mirror until we see clearly. We see these metaphors across our different traditions. How does this network of interrelated complexities emerge and interface and feed back into the cosmos? Why does the universe create all these complex living organisms? Its creativity is amazing, and it is all connected. So any of our bioethical questions has to take into account this incredible information that saturates the universe. We are literally moved by the tension of everything that's ever happened in the universe, or is happening, or will happen. And we don't take this into consideration. And I'm not saying we can't do good work in medical science, but we also have to have, again, that humility of understanding that there's more to meets the eye, Horatio, which is a phrase from Shakespeare. More that meets the eye to what we know, and letting our own heart as medical practitioners open to be responsible to what is really in the best interest of this person or this child or this potentiality. Heart Math Institute research is doing some incredible work, and they realize the heart communicates more information to the brain than the brain does to the heart. And that maybe across a long distance, maybe before the people even meet and they're intending to meet, they're measuring the electromagnetic field of these people's heart and realizing that they're already in communication across space before their bodies come into communication. So there's much more going on at these levels than what we know. I don't know what time it is. Can I go through a few more? Are we?
2 more.
Okay, I'll just go through the ends of these and give you some of these perspectives. So we have here the Earth, the rainbow serpent of life, the Australian seeds of life, new baby stars, and new baby stars. And they're all, of course, interconnected. We have here the gravitational lensing of space, that the mind, like gravity, is literally bending how we see life, how we choose to see life and experience life. So here are the metaphors. These little guys, little souls somewhere out in space, are looking through the curvature of space to find where their mom will be in some world sometime. So she's going to have to grow up first, but maybe she'll be one of their moms. So we have this idea of each unique relationship. This is colliding galaxies like a heart. That's a literal picture from the Hubble Space Telescope. These colliding galaxies giving birth to new baby stars. So each couple gives birth to its own creative expression, just like the galaxies give birth to life and stars across space and time. We think that life may originate in dust clouds in space. We found the same spectra as the bacteria on Earth. We don't know where the water that the Earth was populated with that gave rise to life, or that fills our bodies, where it really came from in space. Water, hydrogen, is one of the first molecules in the universe. So every drop of hydrogen goes back to the beginnings of the universe. We have that harmonic of Om Mani Padme Hum, the jewel in the chalice, In the Buddhist tradition and the Hindu tradition, we have the exploded star that gives rise to all of these multidimensional particles and substance that becomes the fertilizer for new worlds in the universe. The spinning of stars, the spinning of the Sufis, the whole thing is made by the spinning of particles and the pulse of the heartbeat. So we have all of these little heartbeats and different exploded stars. We have Shiva Shakti dancing in the power of the life of the sun coming through to the earth, and the heartbeat of our galaxy in the center of our own galaxy, the big black hole. I'm not going to move this one until Deborah looks up and sees the pulsing heart. Alright, so it's more of Orion. We're almost at the end of our slideshow. These are the stars, the geometry going around the center of our galaxy, and the question of other worlds. But I know we are at the end of our time, so I will just leave you with the star-birthing cosmic clouds in the Eagle Nebula, new babies perhaps filling the universe from other worlds, which all of our different traditions talk about the possibility of life from innumerable other worlds. And I'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Carla. Good evening.
Thank you for staying for so long till the end of the day. And I promise to be as quick as I can and to first bring you down from the spiritual ideas we've just heard in a beautiful way. It was fascinating. And what I'm going to do, unfortunately for some of you, is quite the opposite, because we are going to come down to earth and look at the issues, some of the issues we were talking about the whole morning, the whole day, in fact, from a legal point of view. I mean, during the day we've heard or we've had many question marks. What if? How do we know? What do we do? What says? What should we say? All these question marks are issues of bioethics, but some of them are also legal questions which the law has an answer. And what I'm going to do today is take these bioethical issues together with medical issues and see how the law looks at these issues and maybe find solutions for some of them. I'll do it very quickly, and I'll start by saying that we are now, and I think this comes out from all the presentations we have heard today, we are now standing in a crossroad. I mean, it's in a position where we have many, many questions, bioethical questions. We have new technologies, we have new gene editing every day. Every evening when I open my computer, I find some new story. Just yesterday I found the stories about the macaque monkeys, which I'm going to talk about today. So this is the time to see what does the law says about all this, and I refer to the law as the law because most of the modern legal systems take the same or go the same direction as the other legal system. We don't have too many varieties. So we are in a crossroad, and I've chosen. First we'll look at some facts, and then we'll see what comes out of these facts. First, I think we've already heard or decided or agreed that technology always precedes the law. I mean, first we have technology. I'm sorry Daniel just left, but he asked in the morning what comes before. does science come before, or does bioethics comes before science? And my answer to this is very clear. I think science is the first one to come. You need to have science in order to ask question of bioethics. I mean, science always precedes new technologies appear, and then the law has to react. Society has to react and find the answer. Law regulates and restricts scientific innovations. When we look at the CRISPR now, at the new technology, we are going to ask, does the law permit if we permit it? If we are looking for whom all the scientific papers condemned. We need to know first what the law in China, or wherever he did his experiment, what the law says. Only after we know what is the legal answer to the problem, only then can we ask, okay, so what do other bioethical issues remain after the law said is decided what is the situation here. Ethical principles, and this is going to be the main theme if I talk, ethical principles affect the law. The law is affected by culture, by religion, by politics, and all these affect the law. Thus, the law is local, whereas technology is global. And what I'm going to end this presentation with is again the same, that bioethics may be global and ethics may be global, and science is surely global, but law should be local, because law represents the society we live in. I mean, the law in Israel might be quite similar to the law in UK or in the USA or in Australia. We all come from the same legal family, but culture and religion and social issues affect the law, so the law is local. That's why we have different legal answer, but we only have usually one answer from the bioethical aspect. Okay, this is what I found yesterday night while I was working on the presentation, and this is the new research about the monkeys. Here you have the 5 macaque monkeys, cloned from a mature monkey. The purpose was to watch the biological clock disorders in their bodies in order to find new things about the human beings. I mean, the problem was that, as somebody has commented before, maybe Daniel or I don't remember who, the difference between this case, maybe it was you, the difference between this case and the first one, the Chinese babies, is that in the case of the Chinese babies, the gene editing enhanced their biological being. But here, the macaque, they affected them. I mean, they were affected by a gene which made which decreased their well-being. So maybe that's the difference. But anyway, yesterday I watched the rising debate about how bioethical this case is, and again, like we mentioned before, maybe it's also politics here. This is the monkeys. You can see the 4 or 5 new ones. I've taken the Israeli perspective to look at some of the issues we are going to talk about, because Israel is very multicultural, multi-religious, whatever you want. We have everything in a very tiny state. We have Jews, we have most Arabs, which are Muslims and Christians and Druze and others. And some of them are religious, some of them are non-religious, secular. So we have all the differences between culture and society and beliefs and way of life. So we have, in fact, we have all walks of life in the Israeli society. When I go into a classroom in Zefat, where I teach, which is in the northern part of Israel, I enter the class, I see in front of me all of this Israeli society. We have a representative of every one of the Israeli society. I have Druze students, I have Muslim students, I have Orthodox religious Jews, I have youngsters from the kibbutzim, I have all representative of every social group or religious group from the Israeli society. I have them in the classroom. So Israel is a very good place to start looking at the law from the eyes of these different way of looking at it. I'll start with I think the most ethical issue I'll touch upon in this presentation, and this is to say that bioethical and ethics sometimes trump the law and sometimes trump even politics. There are times when politics is set aside and the law is set aside and only ethics remains. And this is the case of the humanitarian aid which Israel is giving the Syrian refugees during the last few years. You can see here some of the pictures of the soldier holding the little baby. These are all Syrian people, civilian people coming from the northern border, from Syria, in a very bad situation. All of them were sick, some women are going to have babies, children, whatever you have, they come through the border, the army brings them to hospitals in the northern part of Israel, and the doctors take care of these Syrian people. The operation is called Good Neighbors. We've treated more than 4,000 Syrians during the last few years. Thousands of them are children. And the ethical question we are facing, or the medical doctors are facing, is a very difficult question given the economic situation of Israel. Israel is not a wealthy country, and the northern part of Israel suffers from very low medical caretaking. So the problem was, what do we do with all these Syrians coming to Israeli hospitals? Because according to international humanitarian law, the law provides for standard procedure. I mean, the doctors have to preserve life. I mean, when we get a Syrian soldier wounded, or a Syrian woman coming to have a baby, or a baby with burns, or blind, or diabetics, or whatever they have with them when they come, according to international humanitarian law, we have to preserve life and alleviate suffering. That's all what humanitarian law tells our medical staff to do. Israeli medical law applied on Israeli citizens is quite different, because in Israel the standard protocol is best possible care. I mean, you give them more than you should give according to humanitarian law. The ethical solution which Israel adopted, even though it costs a lot of money, is that the Syrians are taken care of according to the Israeli standard. I mean, we put a lot of money coping with a lot of problems. I don't have enough time to tell you about these problems, but it's amazing. I think somebody just has to come and look at all these complex ethical problems the medical stuff is facing. If you just think about all these diseases they suffer from, on the one hand, the traumas they come with, and the problems we are facing. How do you even think about ethics when you don't have the language, you don't know how to get informed consent, or even consent, let alone informed. We don't have medical records of the people who are going to get help. We don't have medical records. They don't have family support, and these are the people who the medical staff has to take care of the best as they can. And then we have to ask, and this is I think the most difficult question, when they get well, and when the child at the end of the day smiles at the nurse, and when the woman gets the healthy baby, what next? When you take care of the diabetic one, and they tend to be diabetics, what do you do with them? They need insulin. They don't have refrigerators where they are going back to Syria. So what do you do with them? How do you treat them? All these ethical questions have to be answered by medical staff who don't have answers. I mean, we don't have answers, we don't have enough money to do the best, but we're trying as much as we can. I think this is the best example I can give you to show that in some situations, the law, even though it says something, we do better. Politics, even though it leads to something, we look at it a different way, and at the end of the day, we ask the bioethics, or ourselves, or our hearts, if we come back to the heart. We ask what in our heart is to do with this problem. Now, I'm going to lead through very, very quickly through some more ethical dilemmas and law according to which they were solved. First one is and I won't do all of them. You have them in the booklet, so if you are interested, you can read afterwards. I'll only take the most important ones. Here I want to say a few words about a very important example of ethical issue, belief, which changed the law. And we had the law, and we were going by this law, and the Supreme Court had decided a few cases about this law, and then we thought again, and we implemented some bioethical views, norms, and we changed the law. Now the law is different. The story deals with cases of wrongful birth. I believe some of you may have heard about such cases. These are cases where the woman is pregnant, she goes to a genetic consultation, and the geneticist makes some mistakes negligently, and says everything is fine with the baby, and then the baby is born, and something is wrong with the baby, and the baby is suing the doctor, not his parents. The baby is suing the doctor for wrongful life. He's saying to the doctor, because of you, I'm alive. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be alive. And this is a very problematic issue, both for the Jewish religion and from ethical point of view. Is life an injury? Could you compensate somebody for just being born? They couldn't have been born otherwise. I mean, the baby was not well. I mean, the embryo, the fetus was not well, and it was going to be born like this. But if the doctor has told the mother about it, she would have aborted it. So it's life, which is the result of medical negligence. For many, many years, the Israeli Supreme Court used to say that wrongful life, the doctor, the geneticist, has to pay for the wrongful life. Just a few years ago, the Israeli society, there were more and more voices saying that this is unethical, this is wrong, this isn't sound Jewish religion, and we should change the law. And then the decision was taken, and the law was changed due to ethical reasons. So I think this is a very good example to show you how even the law, which we regard very strict and very shaped, very close, and very decisive, even the law can bend and be changed when we have sufficient bioethic issues or reasons. I'll do it very quickly here. Israeli law, Israeli society, Jewish religions, all are very, very pro-natal. I mean, Israeli society is very pro-natalist society. We do in vitro IVF, we do pre-implantation genetic diagnosis and PGD. And the important thing is that even the ultra-Orthodox Jews and the ultra-Orthodox Arabs, both Muslims and Druze, which religion, both Jewish and Muslims and Druze, strongly opposed to all this intervention. Life shows that in fact all the young population in Israel, Jews, Muslims, and Christians and Druze, they all use these new technologies to have children, even though, as I said, the religion doesn't allow it. Here we have a very nice, I love this picture, because you can see here, this is the head of the Druze community in Israel, Sheikh Wafik Tarif. This is the Israeli health minister. You can see that he is very religious, and this one is also very religious. Yet, and this is the director of the Galilee Medical Center, who is a Druze, and all the three of them. This is a very rich lady who financed some of the activities. But look at those three. I mean, you can see religion on the one hand, and all of them are celebrating the IVF unit, even though it's not allowed, even though all the youngsters who are even religious come, at the end of the day when it's dark and nobody knows and they don't talk about it, they celebrate it, and you can see that new technologies do affect the society. IVF, this came out in the Israeli paper yesterday. The first IVF baby born in Israel. She was born in 1986. 2 days ago or 3 days ago, this first IVF baby, gave birth to two twins in Haifa. So this is very nice. Also, you see the old hospital here. IVF, you must remember that Israel is a very small country. Everybody knows everybody. And this event is a celebration, a huge celebration. The first IVF baby is born, and now her birthday. And I'm going to... one of the most difficult problems the Israeli society is facing is that because of the political situation, many young men lose their life as soldiers or in terror action or whatever. And the question arises, what do we do about the next generation? I mean, if they were married, can we take, after the death, can we take sperm from them for the widow to get pregnant and have the children? And there was a very heated debate between one of the widows who wanted very much to become pregnant from her late husband, who was killed while he was in the IDF, and they had the frozen, they had taken the sperm and everything was ready, but then she changed her mind and she didn't want to go through it, and the parents went to the Supreme Court and asked to have the legal possession. We just heard all these question marks. Who owned the baby? So this is the question that came to the Supreme Court. Who owns this baby? The widow doesn't want it anymore. She went on with her life. I mean, she's young, she's 22, she's 23. She wants to have a family, and the parents remain with the sperm and the dead guy, and they want to have a baby by another. And the Supreme Court didn't let them. I mean, he decided that the sperm belongs to the mother, and so the parents went very sad home. Sex selection is also very popular in Israel, allowed again by the religion, which is again very intriguing, because this is, like we heard in the morning, act of God. Who are we to decide if this couple is going to have a boy or a girl? In Israel, we have a law. It's amazing because you just saw the Israeli health minister with a beard, not like yours. And the health ministers with a beard, the very religious, orthodox health minister. But even though this is the situation, we have this committee for sex selection, and I just found out, I called them a few days before, and the outcomes are amazing, because amongst Jews, I was expecting to find more requests to have sons, but it goes 50-50. Jews vote for 50% boys and 50% girls, but look at the Arabs. The Arabs of population who are going to this committee to have the sex of the babies pre-selected, all of them want male. This goes to show you that you shouldn't let technology rule. I mean, you have to do something to intervene, otherwise the whole fabric of the society will be changed. And to clone, or not to clone, again, I'm going just to show you something which was amazing for me. I think that you all know these pictures. I prepared them more for my students than for you, but you can see the hybridization and the genetic engineering. The thing which was very surprising for me is that, again, Jewish religion fully approves of cloning. I don't know what each one of you, Jews or Christians or whatever, your religion said to this situation, but I didn't expect my Judaism to vote for cloning. But the fact is that Israeli law prohibits cloning and germline therapy until 2020, but it allows other gene editing protocols, and this is I think the most fascinating fact of all, kosher pork. I don't know how many of you know how pork for Judaism is unheard of, okay? Yet a very prominent rabbi uh, just went on television and came out into the newspapers saying that meat from cloned pigs are allowed for Jews. And we also use gelatin, which is which is made from bones of animals. It's allowed with dairy. So Judaism is going very fast according to new technologies. We have to just want to speak about one more very interesting factor of Israeli law and bioethical issues. And I think that this is a unique issue in the Israeli law. I don't know, and I do comparative law, I don't know of any other legal system who is so keen of personal autonomy. Personal autonomy in the purest way you can imagine. And I've taken this case just to show you how deep the reaction to autonomy goes in Israeli society and in Israeli court. And again, you cannot find it in English law, you cannot find it in Australian law, you cannot find it in American law. It's unique in the Israeli legal system. I don't know why. Maybe because Judaism, I don't know. The story goes like this. There was a woman patient who went to a hospital to have her shoulder operated on, and she consented, she got explanation, she signed the consent form, everything, she understood everything, and she went to bed. It was evening. In the morning, during the night, her doctors were reconsidering the situation and decided that before having this procedure on her shoulder, they'd like to operate experimentally on her knee. And only after they found out what they wanted to know from her knee, then they will operate it, because this is an easier operation and the shoulder is a difficult operation. And it was the morning, she was lightly sedated, she was dreaming about the operation she's going to have on her shoulder, and suddenly, while being wheeled into the operation room, they told her, by the way, we changed the protocol and we are not going to operate your shoulder, we are going to operate her knee. Do you understand? Do you agree? And she signed and agreed the consent form. Okay? Then she went into operation. There was no negligence on the part of the doctors. Everything went fine. But when she came she revived after the operation, they found out it was an inherent problem within this kind of operation, without anybody's fault. She came out, I think, 30% crippled, and she has nobody to blame. She agreed to both operations. So the Israeli Supreme Court, after it came to the Supreme Court, after more than 10 years, the Israeli court decided like this. She couldn't get compensation for the injury, the physical injury to her shoulder. She couldn't get compensation because she agreed to the operation. And even if we say that this is not real consent, this is not informed consent, then she would have consented had she understood what they were saying. So there was not what we call causal connection. The result was not connected to the negligence. So on the face of it, she has to go back home with no compensation because she consented. Nobody was negligent. So what should we do now? But the Supreme Court have Jewish heart. They can't let her go without compensating. She has a huge problem. So they came up with an invention which is now dominating the whole tort law of patient's law in Israel. And they said that her autonomy was bypassed or injured. I mean, she didn't know the exact situation, so not knowing, she couldn't have had real choice. Not having a choice is an injury to your autonomy. And she got compensation only for her injured autonomy, not related in any way to the physical injury she suffered. And from then on until now, we see that injury to autonomy, even though you don't have physical injury, even though you have consented to everything which was done for you, even though you can't blame the doctors for anything, just not explaining enough, autonomy now weighs a lot of money in Israeli law. Sometimes you get more than $1 million and a half Israeli shekels just for the injury to your autonomy. And I think I have a lot to say, but you are tired, it's the end of the day, so let me just conclude and say that I wanted to talk about privacy in medical data, which is a huge problem all over the world. We are losing our privacy. I don't know if any, I mean, I believe you have thought about it because you are a bioethicist. We, from the legal aspect, we think about it very seriously because the privacy of our data, medical data, is open to all the big pharmaceutical companies. And it's almost like Google. You are going to start getting notes from Google or Facebook or whoever relating to your medical situation, just the way we get notes from Booking.com or whatever, according to your way of life. So data protection is problematic. Forensic evidence. Very popular in Israeli law. We use all the new technologies in court, and we are just going to have a new retrial about which the whole country is talking about, a murder. Somebody is sitting in jail for over 12 years now for allegedly, not allegedly, the Supreme Court, he decided that he murdered this beautiful girl in the toilet at the school. He was convicted. He sits in prison now for 12 years. Now they found hairs from somebody, we don't know who. They sent it to a DNA test in the United States, and they're going to hold a new trial. So forensic evidence is very big in Israel. Illiteracy, just a word and then I'll conclude. We heard during the whole day, we heard more and more about literacy and illiteracy, about understanding science or not understanding science. And I think the problem is that the legal lawmakers don't understand science, judges don't understand science, and juries, wherever you have the jury systems, juries don't understand science. Science go, as I started to say, science go somewhere beyond all of us. We hardly understand anything about it. But at the end of the day, with all due respect to bioethics, which has a very important task in our society. It is the law which says the last word. I mean, you have to abide the law. It doesn't matter what bioethics say. First, you have to abide the law. Only later you can ask yourself what bioethics says about the law. Is it okay? Is it not okay? You want to change it, you don't want to change it. But first, you have to abide the law. And if you have to abide the law, then you have to. If you are the law, you have to understand what you're doing. You have to understand what you're legislating. And I think the most important problem of our age is that the law doesn't understand science. That's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Tamar, are there any questions? Any questions for now? I think we'll continue our questions later.